Capcom was very deliberate about what they showed, and even more deliberate about what they didn't. If you enjoy deep Resident Evil lore, make sure you subscribe. Make sure to follow my X account. The giveaway winner will be announced there. Also, the giveaway entries close on January 25th. I'll also be posting editing updates and upcoming video release dates on my X. The biological mystery at the center of the 2028 Raccoon City incident involves a synthetic pathogen known as Elpis. This organism represents a departure from the traditional viral threats seen during the Umbrella era. While the T virus and the G virus were designed to cause massive physical mutations and cellular necrosis, Elpis is a neurological architect. It does not seek to destroy the body of the host. Instead, it targets the frontal lobe and the amygdala to perform a surgical rewrite of the human will. By hollowing out the capacity for logic and fear, the pathogen creates a population that is physically healthy and intelligent, but completely compliant to a central signal. This shift from physical horror to neural saturation is the defining characteristic of the New World Order established by Victor Gideon. Elpis functions as a biological antenna rather than a simple infection. It utilizes a base of modified mutamycete DNA to weave a fungal neural network within the host nervous system. These filaments do not replace human cells, but interface with them directly at the synaptic level. This allows the virus to mute the conscious mind while leaving motor skills and tactical memory intact. An individual infected with Elpis can still drive vehicles, operate high-tier machinery, and engage in coordinated military maneuvers. However, they possess zero empathy and zero ability to resist commands broadcast on a specific frequency. In the year 2028, this technology turns the biohazard into a tool of governance. It ensures that the world infrastructure remains standing, while the people inside are converted into a singular and obedient hive mind. The distribution of the pathogen is managed through an aerosolized particulate known as static fog. This fog is electronically active and contains microscopic spores that are inhaled by anyone within the exclusion zone. Once these spores enter the lungs, they travel to the brain and begin the installation of the fungal network. This process is subtle and does not cause the physical pain associated with earlier viral strains. A person may feel a slight sense of disorientation before their sense of self is permanently deleted. Victor Gideon believes this is an act of mercy. He views the chaos of human emotion as a biological error and sees Elpis as the final correction. To the administrative mind of Gideon, a world of compliant and silent humans is a world at peace. The complexity of Elpis also involves its ability to act as a biological firewall. Once the network is established, it protects the host from other viral infections to maintain the clarity of the broadcast signal. This means that a compliant host will not mutate into a zombie or a parasitic monster. They remain physically human in appearance, which creates a deep sense of paranoia for survivors like Grace Ashcroft. In the Wrenwood Hotel, the air itself is the delivery system for this silence. The building was modified to act as a giant neural amplifier, ensuring that the Elpis signal reaches every floor and every room. It is a system of total institutional control, a biological requiem for human agency that has been 30 years in the making, since the original Raccoon City incident in 1998. The presence of Chris Redfield in the year 2028 is a subject of intense forensic interest within the Resident Evil Requiem archives. As a founding member of the BSAA and a veteran of nearly 30 years of biological warfare, Chris is the primary tactical lead for the rogue unit known as Hound Wolf. Following the betrayal of the BSAA and its transition into a consumer of Elpis technology, Chris has gone off the grid to conduct a private military audit of the organization. His role in the game is that of a commander and a mentor rather than a primary field agent. This allows the story to focus on the vulnerability of Grace Ashcroft while still providing the tactical weight of the legendary STARS member. Chris is the one hunting the architects of the Elpis project from the outside, using his decades of experience to dismantle the institutional rot. Chris Redfield in the year 2028 is a man defined by moral exhaustion. He has spent his entire adult life fighting a war that seems to have no end. His appearance reflects this toll, showing a grizzled soldier who has seen his friends and his ideals consumed by the biohazard industry. While he is confirmed to be active during the Shadows of Rose timeline in 2037, his mission in the Raccoon City ruins is his final attempt to fix the system he helped create. He provides the tactical intelligence and the forensic context that Grace needs to navigate the Wrenwood Hotel. He is the voice on the radio and the figure in the shadows, representing the passing of the torch to a new generation of survivors who must fight with their minds instead of just their guns. His involvement in the story is essential because he understands the DNA of the cover-up. He was there when the first reports of the Arklay Mountains were filed, and he was there when the city was burned in 1998. He recognizes the signature of the sterilization strategy in the modern Elpis project. Chris acts as the shield for Grace, providing the cover fire and the strategic distractions that allow her to reach the lost records of the RPD. He is not a savior who will win the war for her. Instead, he is a tactical partner who realizes that his era of physical dominance is coming to an end. The move toward neural and behavioral control means that a soldier like Chris is becoming a relic. He fights one last time to ensure that the truth is declassified before the silence of Gideon becomes permanent. The relationship between Chris and the modern BSAA is one of total institutional betrayal. He has realized that the people he trained are now the ones distributing the infection. This realization adds a layer of personal tragedy to his character in Resident Evil Requiem. He is not just fighting monsters, he is fighting his own legacy. By appearing as a strategic commander, Chris remains a high-tier asset without overshadowing the survival horror experience of the new leads. He is the person who finally authorizes the high-stakes intervention at the Wrenwood Hotel, ensuring that the final audit of the Elpis project is completed. His presence is a requiem for the Old World Guard, a soldier who has finally accepted that the only victory left is the survival of the truth. The status of Jill Valentine in the year 2028 is a critical forensic question that connects the 30th anniversary to the original STARS legacy. Following her harrowing survival in Raccoon City and her subsequent brainwashing by Albert Wesker, Jill has remained a high-tier operative for the BSAA. However, as the organization began its descent into institutional corruption, Jill went off the grid to perform her own private investigation. She is theorized to be operating as a ghost in the system, a rogue investigator who is hunting the same lost RPD records that Leon Kennedy and Grace Ashcroft are seeking. Her role in Resident Evil Requiem is that of a silent partner, providing the technical backdoors and the security overrides that Grace needs to penetrate the most secure levels of the Wrenwood Hotel. Jill Valentine possesses a unique biological profile due to her past exposure to the T-virus and the experimental antibodies she developed during her time with Wesker. In the year 2028, She still has the physical vitality of a woman in her prime, despite being in her 50s. This makes her a high-value target for Victor Gideon, who views her as a natural archive of biological data. Jill is aware of this and uses her status as a dead woman, walking to move through the biohazard zones undetected. She represents the persistence of the original star's spirit, a survivor who has been broken and rebuilt so many times that she is now immune to the psychological gaslighting of the Elpis signal. She is the person who first discovered the link between the Rhodes Hill facility and the murder of Alyssa Ashcroft. Her presence in the story is felt through the evidence she leaves behind. Grace finds Jill's research notes and digital recordings scattered throughout the hotel, providing a trail of breadcrumbs that leads to the heart of the conspiracy. Jill is the person who understands the master of unlocking philosophy better than anyone else, and she applies it to the digital encryption of the year 2028. She is the one who realized that the Elpis project was not just a virus, but a social ideology designed to erase human agency. While she may not be the primary protagonist, she is the intellectual architect of the resistance. Her mission is to ensure that the silence of Gideon is broken by the light of the truth. The return of Jill Valentine provides the definitive closure for the 30-year narrative arc. She was there when the nightmare started in the Spencer Mansion in 1996, and she is there to see it end in the Raccoon City ruins in 2028. Her story is a requiem for the forgotten victims of the Umbrella era. She represents the refusal to comply with the systems of control, a character who has sacrificed everything to protect the world from the very things that inhabit her own body. By the end of Resident Evil Requiem, Jill's role in exposing the BSAA rot will be the catalyst for the final revolution. She is the forensic key to the entire mystery. The survivor who proved that even a rewritten mind can still find the strength to rebel. The evolution of the BSAA from a defense organization into a primary antagonist is the defining institutional horror of Resident Evil Requiem. In the years following the global C virus crisis, the BSAA found itself in a state of terminal administrative decay. The organization realized that traditional military containment was failing and began to seek more efficient ways to manage biological threats. This led to a secret partnership with Victor Gideon and the Elpis project. The BSAA is the primary customer and distributor of the Elpis pathogen. They are utilizing the neural muting technology to create a compliant and tactical infantry unit that does not feel pain, does not question orders, and can be managed from a central command node. They have transitioned from the protectors of humanity into the administrators of its silence. The clinical reality of this betrayal is seen in the Elpis integrated soldiers found at the Wrenwood Hotel. These units are high-functioning humans who have been neurally sterilized to ensure absolute obedience. The BSAA leadership believes this is the only way to maintain global order in a world defined by permanent biohazard threats. They have turned the concept of a shield into a cage. This makes the BSAA the true antagonist in a systemic sense. While Victor Gideon is the architect of the virus, the BSAA is the engine that provides the political protection and the physical infrastructure for its deployment. They are the ones who redacted the RPD records and authorized the memory extraction experiments at Rhodes Hill. For veterans like Leon Kennedy and Chris Redfield, the corruption of the BSAA is a source of profound moral exhaustion. It proves that the 30-year war against biological terror has been a failure of governance. The institutions built to save the world have become the very thing they were designed to destroy. This adds a layer of adult horror to the game, as the player is not just fighting monsters, but a global defense network. The BSAA acts as the primary enforcement arm for the Elpis ideology, utilizing their elite strike teams to protect the interests of Victor Gideon. They are the institutional mask that hides the administrative evil of the New World Order. The final verdict on the BSAA will be written through the forensic investigation of Grace Ashcroft. By auditing their encrypted communications and shadow agreements, she exposes the fact that the BSAA has been the primary funder of the Elpis project since the year 2018. They are the ones who facilitated the murder of her mother to protect the lost records of the RPD. The horror of Resident Evil Requiem is the realization that the people who were supposed to protect the survivors are the ones who have decided to process them. The BSAA is the requiem for the idea of a hero organization, a reminder that in the world of the aftermath, the system itself is the most dangerous pathogen of all. The survival of Alyssa Ashcroft during the 1998 Raccoon City incident is a foundational mystery that explains the unique biology of her daughter, Grace. As an investigative reporter for the Daily Advisor, Alyssa was at the center of the chaos when the T-virus was first released. While she lacked the military training of the STARS members, her high intellect and her refusal to comply with authority allowed her to navigate the digital and physical shadows of the city. Forensic data from the year 1998 indicates that Alyssa was exposed to a unique cocktail of pathogens and early vaccine prototypes, including the daylight serum. This exposure did not turn her into a monster, but it did provide her with a rare set of stabilized hybrid antibodies that stayed in her system for the rest of her life. Alyssa survived the incident by uncovering the secret paper trail of the Umbrella Corporation while the city was burning around her. She was one of the few civilians to escape the exclusion zone before the sterilization operation was finalized. However, her survival made her a high-value target for the shadow government. For 20 years, she lived on the run, continuing her audit of the global security apparatus and the lost records of the RPD. In the year 2018, she finally tracked the conspiracy back to the Rhodes Hill facility, which led to her murder by Victor Gideon. Her survival in 1998 was the event that inadvertently created the biological key needed for the 2028 Elpis project. The hybrid antibodies she developed in Raccoon City were passed down to Grace, making her blood the only thing capable of stabilizing the Elpis virus. Alyssa is the requiem for the investigative spirit, a woman who proved that the truth is the only weapon that can survive a biological apocalypse. Her ability to survive the 1998 strike gave her the time needed to seed the future with a witness who could finally finish her work. She is the bridge between the analog horror of the past and the digital forensics of the present. As Grace audits her mother's final moments at the Wrenwood Hotel, she realizes that Alyssa never stopped fighting for the truth. Her survival in Raccoon City was not just a miracle of luck, but a clinical demonstration of the power of the human mind over biological failure. Alyssa Ashcroft proved that even in the face of absolute despair, a person with a mind for evidence can still find a way to leave a record for the future. She is the reason Grace has the blood of a survivor and the mind of an analyst. Her legacy is the focal point of the 30th anniversary mission, a reminder that the truth cannot be incinerated by a thermobaric bomb. The identity of the man who fathered Grace Ashcroft is one of the most significant forensic voids in the personal files recovered from the Rhodes Hill facility. While the legacy of her mother, Alyssa Ashcroft, is well documented throughout the history of the Raccoon City incident, her paternal lineage has been intentionally obscured by high-tier government redactions. Alyssa was a woman defined by her pursuit of the truth, yet she took the secret of Grace's father to her grave in 2018. This silence suggests that the father was not merely a civilian bystander, but someone whose connection to the Ashcroft family would trigger a massive security risk for the global security apparatus. As Grace audits her own biological history, she begins to uncover evidence that her father was a high-ranking official involved in the original 1998 sterilization strategy. Speculation within the DSO archives suggests that the father may have been a member of the shadow wing of the United States government that originally funded the Elpis project. This would explain why Grace was born with such a unique and stabilized genetic profile. If her mother provided the hybrid antibodies from the Raccoon City streets, and her father provided the institutional genetic markers from the Pentagon laboratories, Grace is effectively a manufactured bridge between the victim and the administrator. This makes her the perfect subject for Victor Gideon's final experiment. Her father represents the authority that allowed the Arklay region to be burned, while her mother represents the resistance that refused to stay silent. Grace is the product of these two conflicting forces, a character who carries the weight of the entire Resident Evil history in her very cells. The reality of this mystery is that the father's identity is a tactical leverage point used by Nathan Dempsey to manipulate Grace into accepting the mission at the Wrenwood Hotel. Dempsey has hinted that the answers Grace seeks regarding her father are hidden within the lost records of the RPD. This creates a psychological trap for the protagonist. She is hunting for her own origin story while being hunted by the man who wants to harvest it. The potential revelation that her father was complicit in the destruction of Raccoon City adds a layer of adult horror to her journey. It forces her to confront the possibility that her very existence is a byproduct of the institutional rot she is trying to expose. She is the daughter of the whistleblower and the architect, a biological requiem for a world that was broken before she was even born. As the investigation reaches the subterranean levels of the RPD ruins, the evidence points toward a man who served as a liaison between Umbrella and the Pentagon during the 1990s. This individual would have had the clearance to protect Alyssa from early cleanup crews, while also possessing the cold logic required to redact his own involvement in her life. For Grace, finding the name of her father is not about a family reunion. It is about performing a final audit on the secrets of her blood. She needs to know if her drive for the truth is a natural inheritance from her mother, or a programmed response from the administrative side of her lineage. The mystery of her father is the soul of her internal conflict, a reminder that in the world of Resident Evil, the most terrifying monsters are often found in our own DNA. Nathan Dempsey serves as the primary bridge between the FBI technical branch and the shadow interests of Victor Gideon. Dempsey acts as Grace Ashcroft's immediate superior, the man who assigned her to the Wrenwood Hotel mission under the guise of a standard forensic audit. However, his true agenda is far more insidious. Dempsey is a high-level mole who has been integrated into the federal system to act as a recruiter for the Elpis project. His specific role was to identify and secure Grace because of her unique biological status as a natural archive of Raccoon City antibodies. He did not send her to the hotel to find the truth. He sent her there to be processed by Gideon. Dempsey represents the institutional betrayal that defines the modern era of the franchise. A man who uses the badge to facilitate the extinction of human agency. The history of Nathan Dempsey reveals a man who has been on the Shadow payroll since the collapse of Umbrella in 2003. He was part of the original cleanup crews that redacted the RPD evidence files, and he has spent 20 years ensuring that survivors like Alyssa Ashcroft were monitored and eventually neutralized. He is an administrative predator who understands that the best way to control a person is to provide them with a mission that appeals to their trauma. By dangling the lost records of the RPD in front of Grace, he successfully led her directly into the heart of Gideon's amplifier. Dempsey does not view his actions as a betrayal. Instead, he sees himself as a necessary part of the New World Order, a man who is helping to stabilize the global population through the Elpis ideology. Dempsey's agenda also involves the total subversion of the FBI from within. He has utilized his position to ensure that any investigation into the BSAA or the Rhodes Hill facility is immediately diverted or redacted. He is the person who ensured that Leon Kennedy would be isolated during the mission, providing Gideon with the window of opportunity needed to harvest Grace's blood. He is the requiem for government trust, a character who proves that the most dangerous weapon in a biohazard zone is a signed authorization form. Grace's realization of Dempsey's betrayal is the turning point of the game, shifting her focus from an external investigation to an internal war against the institution she once believed in. The final phase of Dempsey's agenda is the activation of the Elpis broadcast. He is the person responsible for ensuring that the technical infrastructure of the FBI and other law enforcement agencies is compatible with the Elpis frequency. He wants to ensure that when the signal is turned on, there is no one left in the government who can resist. He is the administrator of the silence, a man who has traded his morality for a high-tier position in Gideon's compliant paradise. By defeating Dempsey, Grace is not just stopping a mole. She is performing a forensic strike against the very idea of the shadow state. His agenda is the ultimate proof that the biohazard is no longer a virus in a lab, but a policy in a boardroom. He is the face of the modern Resident Evil villain, a man who destroys the world with a keyboard and a smile. The involvement of Sherry Birkin in the year 2028 is a critical element of Leon Kennedy's psychological and tactical framework. Following her survival of the G virus in 1998 and her time as a high-level DSO agent in the 2010s, Sherry has transitioned into a primary support and advisory role for the veteran operatives. In Resident Evil Requiem, she serves as Leon's tactical anchor, the voice in his ear that provides the moral motivation needed to survive the moral exhaustion of the Raccoon City ruins. Sherry is the person who manages Leon's communications and coordinates the forensic data stream between Grace and the DSO. She represents the persistence of the Raccoon City survivors, a character who has lived through the worst biological horrors and emerged as the primary advocate for the victims. Sherry's role is defined by her deep personal connection to Leon. He was the man who saved her life 30 years ago, and she is now the person who must save his soul from the burnout of a lifetime of war. She operates from a secure DSO command node, utilizing her high-tier security clearance to bypass the redactions and blockades set up by Nathan Dempsey and the corrupted BSAA. While she may not be a playable field agent in this title, her presence is felt in every strategic decision Leon makes. She provides the emotional stakes for the mission, reminding Leon that the world is still worth saving because of the people like Grace who are still fighting for the truth. Sherry is the requiem for the innocent survivor, the person who proved that the scars of the past do not have to define the future. Her unique biology also plays a role in the narrative. Because of her past exposure to the G virus and the subsequent stabilization of her cells, Sherry possesses a level of neural resilience that makes her resistant to the early stages of the ELPIS frequency. She is the one who helps Grace develop the forensic filters needed to see through the hallucinations caused by the static fog. She is the scientist and the soldier combined into one, providing the technical expertise needed to audit Gideon's memory extraction experiments. Sherry represents the bridge between the old guard and the next generation, a character who has successfully integrated her trauma into a life of high-stakes service. She is the only person Leon truly trusts in the year 2028, and her support is the only thing keeping him from walking away from the DSO. Furthermore, Sherry's involvement in the mission provides a direct link to the Birkin legacy. She is the person who finally declassifies the full story of the Nest laboratories and the role her father played in the original disaster. This information is essential for Grace to understand the biological logic of Victor Gideon. Sherry is not just a voice on the radio. She is the living record of the biological war, a survivor who has decided that the only way to end the nightmare is to ensure that the records are never redacted again. Her final act in Resident Evil Requiem is to provide Leon with the evidence needed to expose the BSAA rot, ensuring that the 30th anniversary mission results in a global awakening. She is the soul of the resistance, a woman who has turned her survival into a weapon against the silence. The shadow of Ada Wong looms large over the 2028 Raccoon City incident. As a high-level corporate spy who has been auditing the biological market for 3 decades, Ada's return is a narrative necessity for the 30th anniversary. In Resident Evil Requiem, she appears as a shadow competitor whose goals run parallel to those of Leon and Grace. She is not there to save the world, nor is she there to help Gideon. Instead, she is conducting her own private audit of the ELPIS project, seeking to steal the stabilized genetic sequence found in Grace's blood for her unknown employers. Ada represents the cynical reality of the biohazard world, a place where information is the only currency, and loyalty is a tactical inconvenience. Ada's interactions with Leon in the year 2028 are defined by a sense of terminal weariness. Both characters have been playing the same game of cat and mouse for 30 years, and the fire that once defined their relationship has been replaced by a mutual understanding of the toll the war has taken. Ada provides Leon with critical tactical tips and technical overrides, but always for her own gain. She is the person who reveals the true nature of the amplifier at the Wrenwood Hotel, guiding Grace to the neural nodes that Gideon is using to broadcast the signal. Ada is the master of the double cross, a character who ensures that the protagonists are always slightly off balance, forcing them to question if they are being helped or used. The mystery of who Ada is working for in the year 2028 is one of the primary drivers of the endgame content. Forensic data suggests she may be representing a new entity that has emerged from the ruins of the family and Neo Umbrella. This organization seeks to use the ELPIS ideology for its own administrative goals, turning the world into a perfectly ordered market. Ada is the forensic predator who ensures that no single faction gains total control over the pathogen. She represents the friction in the system, the variable that Victor Gideon cannot account for in his logistics. Her presence is a requiem for the mystery of the series, a reminder that in the world of Resident Evil, the most dangerous enemies are the ones who never show their full hand. Furthermore, Ada's return provides the player with a perspective on the global scale of the threat. Through her investigations, we see how the Elpis virus has already been seeded into urban centers outside of the Arklay exclusion zone. She is the one who provides the proof of the BSAA's global distribution network. While Leon and Grace are focused on the local survival, Ada is focused on the planetary audit. Her final act in the game is typically a self-serving one, but it inadvertently provides the heroes with the window of opportunity they need to stop the broadcast. She is the essential anti-hero, the woman who has seen the end of the world so many times that she no longer believes in anything but the next contract. She is the definitive survivor, a character who proves that the only way to stay human in a world of monsters is to never let anyone see your heart. The story of Rosemary Winters is a subject of intense narrative speculation. While her primary character arc was concluded in the year 2037 during the Shadows of Rose archives, her existence in the Resident Evil Requiem timeline is defined by her status as a high-tier biological asset under the protection of Chris Redfield and Hound Wolf. In the year 2028, Rose is a young woman who is just beginning to understand the full extent of her unique fungal biology, inherited from the Megamycete. She does not appear as a primary playable character in this title, but her unique genetic signature is the clinical foundation upon which Victor Gideon built the Elpis project. Rose represents the next evolution of the human species, a character who possesses the neural connectivity that Gideon is trying to synthesize artificially. Rose's presence in the game is felt through the technical research conducted at the Rhodes Hill facility. Gideon has been auditing the data from the Dulvi and Romania incidents, attempting to replicate the hive-mind connection that Rose naturally possesses. She is the biological prototype for the Elpis ideology. However, Rose is protected by Chris Redfield's rogue unit, ensuring that she remains out of Gideon's reach. This creates a state of tactical tension, as Gideon realizes that he doesn't need to capture Rose if he can simply harvest the hybrid antibodies from Grace Ashcroft. Rose is the ghost of the Winter's legacy, a reminder that the world has already moved into a post-human era. She is the requiem for the family, a character who proved that even the most powerful biological force can be tamed by the love of a father. The connection between Rose and Grace is a focal point of the endgame lore. Grace's blood contains the stabilizer needed for the Elpis vaccine, while Rose's biology provides the signal architecture. Gideon's ultimate goal is to bridge these two genetic legacies to create a planetary neural network that can never be shut down. This makes the protection of Rose a primary objective for Chris Redfield, even as he supports Leon in the Raccoon City ruins. Rose is the hope that Gideon wants to pervert, a young woman whose existence is the definitive proof that humanity can integrate with the pathogen without losing its soul. She is the counterpoint to the Elpis ideology, representing the potential for a harmonious evolution, rather than a forced compliance. Furthermore, Rose's story provides the narrative link to the future of the Resident Evil franchise. She is the person who will eventually inherit the war after the legends like Leon and Chris have passed on. In Resident Evil Requiem, she serves as a symbol of what is being fought for. She is the future of the species, a being who is neither fully human nor fully monster. Her existence challenges the administrative logic of Victor Gideon, proving that perfect order is a dead end and that the true path forward is found in the complexity of the human experience. Rose is the silent guardian of the 30th anniversary, a character who proves that even in the year 2028, the most powerful weapon against the silence is the resilience of a child born from the heart of the horror. The survival of Victor Gideon since the official collapse of the Umbrella Corporation in 2003 is a testament to the power of administrative anonymity and biological preservation. Gideon was never a high-profile target for the global security forces because he operated within the logistics and information branches of the company, rather than the research divisions. While the world was hunting for Albert Wesker and the remnants of the Spencer family, Gideon was busy auditing his own erasure. He utilized his high-tier access to the Umbrella Black Budget to launder assets and secure the Rhodes Hill facility under a web of shell companies. For nearly 3 decades, he lived as a ghost in the system, a man who possessed all the knowledge of the old world without any of the legal liabilities. His survival is the result of a cold and calculated refusal to be a protagonist in the early wars. Gideon's physical longevity is the result of early experimental treatments involving refined progenitor strains that he harvested from the Arklay laboratories before their destruction. Unlike the unstable mutations seen in other executives, Gideon utilized surgical grafts and low-level viral saturation to halt his own aging process. In the year 2028, he appears as a man in his late 50s or early 60s, despite having been a senior administrator in the 1990s. He has integrated the virus into his biology not to become a god, but to become a more permanent administrator. He views his body as a functional asset that must be maintained to ensure the success of the L-Peace ideology. This high-functioning biological status allows him to remain rational and focused, avoiding the theatrical madness that led to the downfall of his predecessors. The reality of his survival is also tied to his role as a fixer for the shadow government. For 20 years, Gideon provided the tactical and biological data required for the United States to develop its own domestic bioweapon safeguards. He made himself indispensable to the very people who should have been prosecuting him. By the time the DSO and the FBI realized the extent of his influence, he had already integrated himself into the institutional framework of the global security apparatus. He is the man who never truly left the system. Instead, he simply moved into the spaces that were redacted. His survival is a requiem for justice, a reminder that the most dangerous criminals are the ones who know how to file the paperwork that proves their own innocence. Furthermore, his survival is a psychological weapon used against Leon Kennedy. When Leon confronts Gideon at the Wrenwood Hotel, he is face to face with a living record of the institution that betrayed him in 1998. Gideon represents the persistence of the original sin, a character who has outlived the nuclear fire of Raccoon City to finish the work of his masters. His existence proves that the war was never about stopping the virus, but about who would ultimately control it. Gideon's final act in the year 2028 is to transition from a ghost into a deity, utilizing the Elpis frequency to ensure that he never has to hide again. He is the definitive survivor of the corporate era, a man who has traded his humanity for a seat at the table of the New World Order. The sterilization strategy of 1998 is often remembered as a desperate military act to save the world from the T-virus, but the forensic data uncovered in Resident Evil Requiem reveals a much darker institutional logic. The decision to incinerate Raccoon City was not a last resort. It was a pre-planned protocol designed by a coalition of Umbrella executives and shadow government officials to liquidate the evidence of their shared biological research. The thermal strike was a surgical erasure of the illegal laboratories and the thousands of human test subjects that inhabited them. Victor Gideon was one of the primary architects of this protocol. helping to design the logistics of the exclusion zone and the subsequent media blackout. The strategy was never about the virus. It was about the preservation of the system. The full story of the sterilization reveals that the government knew the city could have been saved through a localized quarantine and the deployment of early vaccine prototypes like the daylight serum. However, a saved city would have left behind witnesses and physical evidence that would have bankrupted the United States and destroyed the pharmaceutical industry. The decision was made to treat the population of Raccoon City as an operational expense. This realization is the source of the deep cynicism that defines Leon Kennedy in the year 2028. He has realized that the heroes were sent into the city to die alongside the evidence. The sterilization was a successful administrative act that paved the way for the development of the ELPIS project, which seeks to perform a neural sterilization of the entire world. Gideon views the 1998 operation as a crude but necessary precursor to his current vision. He learned that fire is an inefficient way to manage a population because it leaves a visible scar on history. His goal in the year 2028 is to implement a sterilization of the mind, ensuring that the next time a city is compromised, the people inside will simply walk into their containment cells without the need for a bomb. He is finishing the work that began in the Arklay Mountains 30 years ago. The sterilization strategy is the original sin of the Resident Evil world, a moment where the protectors of humanity decided that the truth was more dangerous than the pathogen. Grace Ashcroft's mission is to perform a final audit on this strategy, declassifying the names of the men who signed the death warrants. The final closure of the sterilization story involves the recovery of the lost records of the RPD. These files contain the physical proof of the government's complicity and the illegal biological contracts that funded the Nest laboratories. By releasing these records, Grace and Leon are finally performing a counter-sterilization. They are erasing the lies that have allowed the system to survive for 3 decades. The truth is, the only fire that can properly cleanse the Arklay region. Resident Evil Requiem is a requiem for the people of Raccoon City, a story that finally validates their suffering by exposing the cold, administrative logic that led to their destruction. The sterilization strategy was the beginning of the end for the old world, and its exposure is the beginning of the future. The 30th anniversary mission at the Wrenwood Hotel provides the definitive answer to the fates of the other Raccoon City survivors, specifically those from the outbreak files. In the year 2028, it is revealed that Victor Gideon spent the decades following the incident tracking down the ordinary citizens who escaped the city. He viewed these individuals as biological anomalies whose survival provided high-tier data on the long-term effects of viral exposure. Many of the outbreak cast, such as Kevin Ryman or Yoko Suzuki, were lured to the Rhodes Hill Chronic Care Center under the guise of receiving specialized medical treatment for their trauma. In reality, they were used as the primary subjects for Gideon's early memory extraction and neural mapping experiments. Grace Ashcroft finds the digital archives of these survivors within the subterranean levels of the hotel. These files contain the neural recordings and personal histories of the people who lived through the nightmare of 1998. For the fans of the series, this is a somber and high-stakes moment of closure. The game reveals that while some survivors managed to live normal lives for a time, they were eventually caught by the administrative cleanup crews that Gideon managed. Their memories were harvested to help tune the ELPIS frequency, turning their individual tragedies into a global tool of control. This adds a layer of personal sorrow to the mission. as Grace realizes that her mother was part of a larger community of victims who were never allowed to truly escape the exclusion zone. While we may not see all of these characters as physical NPCs in the year 2028, their presence is felt through the environmental storytelling and the forensic data. Some may appear as the high-functioning compliant, their minds erased, but their skills utilized by the BSAA as tactical assets. This represents the ultimate violation of the survivor legacy. The people who fought so hard to escape the fire were eventually consumed by the silence of the administrator. Their story in Resident Evil Requiem is a requiem for the ordinary hero, a reminder that in a world of institutional evil, even the most resilient individual can be processed into a data point. Grace's mission is to reclaim their names and ensure that their struggle is finally recorded in the official history of the world. The inclusion of these legacy survivors validates the 30-year journey of the franchise. It proves that every story told in the Resident Evil universe is connected to the same central rot. By providing closure for the Outbreak cast, Capcom is signaling the end of the Raccoon City era. The archives at the Wrenwood Hotel are the final resting place for the ghosts of 1998. As Leon and Grace dismantle the Elpis network, they are also freeing the memories of the survivors from the digital cage that Gideon built for them. It is a moment of high-tier narrative payoff that honors the history of the series while establishing the brutal reality of the New World Order. The survivors were the first witnesses to the failure of the system, and their records are the key to its final destruction. Resident Evil Requiem utilizes the Arclay exclusion zone to provide a massive and interconnected map that spans the history of the series. While the Wrenwood Hotel and the ruined RPD are the primary focal points, the mission in the year 2028 takes Grace and Leon to several other high-tier forensic sites. These include the overgrown outskirts of the original Spencer Mansion site, where the fungal static fog is at its most concentrated. The area has been reclaimed by nature, but the biological residue of the 1996 incident still pulses beneath the soil. This location serves as a haunting reminder of where the nightmare began, providing a bridge between the analog horror of the first game and the digital ideology of the new project. The players will also explore the Rhodes Hill Chronic Care Center, the facility where Victor Gideon conducted 15 years of memory extraction experiments. This location is a clinical labyrinth of hospital wings and high-security laboratories, filled with the failed shells of those who could not stabilize the Elpis pathogen. It is a place of absolute despair, where the masks of medical philanthropy are stripped away to reveal the industrial nature of the new genocide. The Rhodes Hill facility provides the technical context for Grace's blood, as she finds the laboratory equipment used to audit her mother's unique antibodies. It is a setting that emphasizes the administrative and institutional category of horror that defines the game. Subterranean exploration is also a key component of the campaign. Leon and Grace will descend into the remains of the original Nest laboratories, which were partially preserved by the structural redactions of the 1998 strike. These labs have been integrated into Gideon's modern neural network, utilizing the old power grids to fuel the Elpis broadcast nodes. Navigating these ruins feels like performing an autopsy on a dead god. The players will see the frozen remains of Umbrella's hubris, now serving as the foundation for a much more efficient and dangerous system of control. This setting allows Capcom to utilize nostalgic assets while recontextualizing them through the lens of forensic analysis and modern lighting technology. Finally, the mission concludes at the Arclay Peak transmitter, a massive tower built into the mountainside that acts as the final amplifier for the Elpis signal. This location provides a panoramic view of the ruined Raccoon City, showing the scale of the destruction and the resilience of the forest that has grown over it. The transmitter is a high-tech fortress protected by Elpis integrated BSAA soldiers, representing the final hurdle in the war for the human mind. The diversity of these locations ensures that Resident Evil Requiem feels like a total tour of the series' legacy, moving from the Gothic mansions of the past to the administrative facilities of the future. Each setting is a record of a different failure, and together they form the map of the final reckoning. Part 15. How long is the actual campaign? The dual protagonist campaign of Resident Evil Requiem is designed to be one of the most substantial entries in the franchise, reflecting the 30th anniversary scale of the project. A standard playthrough is estimated to take between 15 and 20 hours, depending on the player's focus on forensic investigation and environmental auditing. The game is divided into two distinct but overlapping narrative paths. Grace Ashcroft's segments focus on the slow burn, psychological horror, and the technical decryption of the lost records, requiring a more cautious and analytical approach. Leon Kennedy's segments provide the high-intensity tactical action and the pulse-pounding survival against the Elpis integrated bioweapons. Together, these two perspectives create a high-tier narrative rhythm that keeps the player engaged for the duration of the mission. The length of the campaign is justified by the depth of the environmental storytelling and the complexity of the puzzles. Unlike the shorter, more linear entries of the past, Resident Evil Requiem encourages the player to audit every room and every file. Finding the redacted records of the RPD and the personal histories of the survivors is essential for achieving the best ending and fully understanding the scope of the conspiracy. The game utilizes a hub and spoke design centered around the Wrenwood Hotel, allowing players to return to previous locations with new technical overrides to unlock additional secrets. This creates a state of permanent discovery, as the world of the year 2028 is filled with layers of digital and physical evidence that must be painstakingly peeled away. There is also a significant amount of optional content that can extend the playtime to over 30 hours for completionists. These side missions involve tracking down the rogue BSAA nodes and performing forensic strikes against Gideon's secondary research sites. Each side mission provides additional lore regarding the sterilization strategy and the fates of the secondary characters. The game also features a revamped mercenary mode that utilizes the Elpis tactical mechanics, allowing players to experience the coordination of the hive mind from a different perspective. The scale of the game is a requiem for the 30-year history, a project that refuses to leave any narrative stone unturned. Furthermore, the dual campaign structure means that the game has a high level of replayability. The choices made as Grace will affect the tactical environment for Leon, and the evidence found by Leon will provide Grace with the keys needed to bypass Gideon's security. This functional symmetry ensures that a second playthrough is required to see the full picture of the events at the Wrenwood Hotel. The length of Resident Evil Requiem is a testament to the complexity of the modern world state, where the threat is no longer a single monster, but a global ideology. It takes time to dismantle a system of silence that has been building for 30 years, and the game honors that struggle by providing a long and rewarding forensic journey. Part 16. Will there be post-launch DLC? Post-launch support for Resident Evil Requiem is centered around the concept of declassifying the final layers of the 30th anniversary mystery. Capcom has outlined a roadmap that includes a major narrative expansion titled Raccoon City Memories. This DLC allows players to step into the role of Alyssa Ashcroft during her final investigative mission in the year 1998. It provides a high-fidelity recreation of the original city streets, utilizing the modern engine to show the visceral reality of the T-virus outbreak from the perspective of a civilian reporter. This expansion is essential for understanding the specific evidence that Alyssa found and why it was so dangerous to the Shadow government. It is a prequel that serves as a love letter to the fans of the Outbreak series. There are also plans for a tactical expansion focused on the Houndwolf unit and Chris Redfield's private war against the corrupted BSAA. This content provides a more combat-oriented experience, showing the military side of the 2028 incident. Players will perform surgical strikes against the ELPIS production facilities, dismantling the infrastructure that Gideon uses to create his integrated infantry. This DLC adds a layer of global scale to the game, showing that the fight at the Wrenwood Hotel is just one part of a larger revolution. It also provides more context for the state of the world in the years leading up to the Shadows of Rose Archives. In addition to narrative content, there will be periodic updates to the forensic kit and the technical puzzles within the main game. These updates will include new redacted files and hidden records that can only be found by utilizing advanced decryption tools. This keeps the community engaged in a collective audit of the game's lore, reflecting the real-world collaborative nature of investigative journalism. Capcom is also planning a series of anniversary costumes and weapon skins that pay homage to the original STARS members and the rookie years of Leon Kennedy. These cosmetic items provide a nostalgic layer to the high-tier tactical action of the year 2028. The post-launch strategy is a requiem for the series' history, ensuring that the 30th anniversary remains a living and evolving experience. By continuing to declassify the records of the Arklay region, Capcom is ensuring that the truth of the sterilization strategy is never fully buried again. The DLC is not just extra content. It is a critical part of the forensic narrative that completes the picture of the Resident Evil world. Whether you are reliving the fire of 1998 as Alyssa or leading the charge against the BSAA as Chris, the post-launch support ensures that the final audit is as thorough as possible. The story of Resident Evil Requiem is a long one, and the DLC is the final chapter of the declassification. Part 17. What are the multiple endings, if any? Resident Evil Requiem features a system of multiple endings based on the player's success in the forensic audit and the choices made during the final confrontation with Victor Gideon. The game does not rely on simple binary moral choices. Instead, the outcome is determined by the amount of evidence the player has successfully declassified and the level of institutional rot they have exposed. There are 3 primary narrative resolutions, each representing a different future for the human mind and the global security apparatus. These endings are the final verdict on the 30-year history of the series, a terminal statement on whether the truth can truly survive in a world of silence. The first ending is known as the Silence of Gideon. This outcome occurs if the player fails to find the lost records of the RPD, or fails to protect Grace Ashcroft's legacy blood during the final act. In this ending, Gideon successfully initiates the ELPIS broadcast, and the world begins its transition into a state of perfect order. The human species becomes a singular and compliant organism, and the protagonists are either processed into the hive mind or neutralized as operational expenses. This is a tragic and adult ending that serves as a warning about the dangers of administrative evil and the loss of individual agency. It is a requiem for humanity, showing what happens when the silence finally wins. The second ending is known as the fragile truth. This is the standard outcome for most players, where Gideon is defeated and the LP's broadcast is neutralized. But the full extent of the institutional rot within the BSAA and the government remains redacted. The world is saved from the immediate threat, but the system that created Gideon remains intact. Grace and Leon go their separate ways, knowing that the war is far from over. This ending highlights the cynical reality of the Resident Evil world, where every victory is a temporary delay for an inevitable biological catastrophe. It is a sober and realistic conclusion that honors the burnout of the veterans and the inexperience of the new survivors. The third ending is the final awakening. This is the true 30th anniversary ending, achieved only by completionists who have successfully declassified all the lost records and exposed every shadow agreement. In this resolution, the full story of the sterilization strategy and the BSAA betrayal is broadcast to the entire world, triggering a global revolution against the administrative elite. Victor Gideon's ideology is dismantled by the light of the truth, and the human species chooses to embrace the chaos of free will over the safety of compliance. This ending provides the definitive closure for the Arklay mystery, showing a world that is finally ready to move past the trauma of 1998. It is a hopeful and terminal requiem that proves the power of evidence over the silence of the administrator. Part 18. How does this connect to future RE games? Resident Evil Requiem serves as the narrative and mechanical foundation for the future of the franchise, establishing the era of forensic horror as the new standard. The game moves the series away from the isolated incidents of the past and into a world of systemic and ideological conflict. By connecting the 1998 Raccoon City lore to the 2028 mission, Capcom is signaling that the biological war is now a planetary and institutional reality. Future titles will likely focus on the aftermath of the Elpis project and the rise of new investigative leads who must navigate a world where the truth is the most valuable and dangerous asset. The game is the bridge that carries the legends into their final roles and introduces the analysts who will take their place. The connection to the future is also found in the evolution of the antagonists. Victor Gideon has proven that the administrative villain is far more effective and terrifying than the theatrical monster. Future Resident Evil games will likely continue to explore the theme of institutional rot, showing how the shadow government and the global security apparatus continue to mutate in the wake of the Raccoon City declassification. The Elpis ideology may have been neutralized in its original form, but the desire for perfect order will always remain a factor in the human system. This shifts the focus of the series toward a more sophisticated and adult category of horror, where the enemy is the very structure of society. Mechanically, the focus on technical forensics and environmental auditing will become a staple of the series. The success of Grace Ashcroft as a protagonist proves that the player is hungry for a more intellectual and high-stakes category of survival horror. Future games will continue to utilize the hub and spoke design and the high-tier technical puzzles, allowing for a deeper level of engagement with the game world. The integration of technology and biology seen in the Elpis pathogen will also remain a key theme, as the series explores the post-human future of the species. Resident Evil Requiem is the blueprint for the next 30 years of horror, a terminal statement on the evolution of the biohazard. Furthermore, the game provides the narrative context for the Shadows of Rose archives in the year 2037. It explains how the world transitioned from the biological chaos of the Winter's era into the managed security of the later years. By the end of Resident Evil Requiem, the stage is set for a world where the legends like Leon and Chris have retired or transitioned into high-level command roles, leaving the field to the next generation of survivors. The game is a requiem for the old world and a welcome to the new one. A project that ensures the series remains relevant and terrifying for a modern audience. The future of Resident Evil is a world of evidence, truth, and the refusal to be silent. Part 19. Final Speculation. What will be answered? February 27th. On February 27th, the world will finally receive the definitive answers to the mysteries that have haunted the Resident Evil community for 3 decades. This date marks the official release of the 30th anniversary title, the moment where the final audit of the Raccoon City incident is completed. The game will provide the terminal resolution for the sterilization strategy, revealing the names of the men who authorized the destruction of the city. It will also reveal the final fate of the lost records of the RPD, ensuring that the evidence of Umbrella's original sin is finally declassified. February 27 is the day the silence of the administrator is broken by the light of the truth. The release will also answer the question of Leon Kennedy's final reckoning. We will see how a man who has lived through 30 years of war finally finds the courage to confront the system that betrayed him. The game will provide the definitive closure for his character arc, showing whether he chooses to become a martyr for the truth or a commander for the future. Similarly, the role of Chris Redfield and Jill Valentine will be finalized, establishing their place in the history of the world state. February 27th is a day of high-tier narrative payoff, a moment where the legends of the 1990s meet the survivors of the mid-2020s. Speculation also points toward a major reveal regarding the origins of the Elpis project and its connection to the very first progenitor research. The game will likely provide the forensic link that connects every virus in the series into a single biological history. This will satisfy the long-term fans who have been following the lore since the original PlayStation era. February 27 is the requiem for the mystery, the point where the questions of the past are replaced by the certainties of the future. It is a day of celebration for the series, a reminder that even after 30 years, the world of Resident Evil still has the power to shock and terrify us with its clinical and institutional horror. Ultimately, February 27th will be a day of transition. It is the end of the Raccoon City era and the beginning of the forensic era. The release of Resident Evil Requiem is a statement that the franchise is ready to tackle the complex and adult themes of the modern world. It is the day the player becomes the auditor of the apocalypse, the one who finally holds the system accountable for its crimes. The truth is coming, and it will be broadcast on every frequency on February 27th. Whether you are a veteran of the Spencer Mansion or a new arrival to the Wrenwood Hotel, the final verdict is almost here. The silence is about to end, and the 30-year war is finally reaching its terminal act.